Fellowship of the Broken, Making Sense of 12-Step Recovery by Angelo. Chapter 38, Step 6. Quote, "We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character." Close quote. If we have been honest and thorough so far, then it will have become fairly obvious that we need to change. The dysfunction of over-identification with the personal ego mind will have been revealed. We have been fighting with life rather than being an expression of life. Step 6 is about the willingness to change. The wording is straightforward, but worth a quick look. The word entirely means wholly, completely or totally. The word ready means willing or eager, and also means a suitable state for action. The God word has the same meaning as in previous steps. The word remove means to take off, take away, dismiss or abolish. The word all means the whole extent or quantity. The word defects means faults, shortcomings or imperfections. And the word character means the mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. So, step 6 means that we are totally willing to have our understanding of the God word take away the whole extent of the faults or imperfections in our personal, mental and moral qualities. This is not about tinkering with certain aspects of our personal behaviour or toning down certain troublesome characteristics. This is about being completely ready for wholesale change and a total willingness to let this happen. This may seem drastic, but addiction cannot be removed from the personal ego self. The whole problem with addiction is over-identification with the personal self, so the solution has to be detachment from it. This means letting go of the entire idea of who we think we are, and that takes time and practice. Before anything can happen, we need to be ready and willing to let it happen. If we're not willing, then nothing much will occur. Willingness to attend 12-step recovery meetings is one thing, but willingness to undergo a complete transformation is another matter entirely. The personal ego mind will find all sorts of clever ways to compromise or postpone and thereby retain its identity. A caterpillar cannot begin the process of metamorphosis yet still hold on to being a caterpillar. If we try to do this, then any changes will be prolonged and painful. We will either need to 1. Move forwards without reservation, 2. Edge forwards slowly and painfully, or 3. Stay stuck where we are and continue to suffer. These are the only choices available. There are only a handful of sentences in the Big Book covering Step 6. We should not draw conclusions from this brevity. If we do not have sufficient willingness to allow personal change, then the wording in the Big Book on Step 6 suggests that we should pray for such willingness. The limited wording on Step 6, and also Step 7, has led to these steps sometimes being referred to as the forgotten steps. This is unfortunate because these steps in reality are essential. The degree to which we are willing to change our identity will directly impact the quality of our recovery. If we have limited willingness, then we may remain abstinent, but we will just be an abstinent caterpillar and continue to suffer. If we forget about these steps, then we can forget about becoming a butterfly. The book 12 Steps and 12 Traditions was published in 1952, 13 years after the Big Book. In this later book, Bill Wilson places great emphasis on Step 6. He suggests that this step differentiates quality of recovery between those who allow change in accordance with their own self-determined idea of how they should be, and those who surrender self-will completely and allow change to take its own course. Clearly, the latter approach is in line with Step 3, whereas the former is not. Another useful reference is a book called Drop the Rock, first published independently in 1993 and then republished by Hazelden in 1999. This book specifically covers Steps 6 and 7 and identifies the rock as the personal ego mind. The simple metaphor is that if we do not drop the rock of our personal thoughts, feelings and behaviours, then we will always struggle to swim. There's little point in loosening our grip of the rock slightly, because it will still drag us down. Either we let go or we don't. The book goes on to explain that change is a cooperative process rather than an abdication of responsibility to our understanding of the God word. Such cooperation requires willingness on our part. We will cover more of Drop the Rock in Step 7. A literal understanding of Step 6 would be that we are ready to have our understanding of a third-party God remove from us those troublesome aspects of character that were identified in our Step 4 inventory. This understanding would imply little action on our part and an expectation that change will take place on its own. I've heard many shares from addicts who have been abstinent for years who say that God has not yet removed all of their defects of character. This expectation that God will do the work is a misunderstanding. A deeper understanding would be that these defects of character are aspects of the personal ego mind, which in turn is a limited form of consciousness. In order to be entirely ready to change, we need to be willing to let go of our defects. The positive qualities of consciousness will then emerge in their place, and it will seem as though the personal self is changing. If we're not prepared to let go of our old behaviours, then obviously nothing much will happen. Nothing changes if nothing changes. If we find ourselves resistant to change, then we should use prayer to petition for willingness. The next level of understanding would be that our readiness to change needs to include not only a willingness to let go of our defects of character, but also a willingness to put in the effort to behave differently. Consciousness is not solely external to us, nor is it merely within us, but actually is us. The desired qualities are the inherent nature of consciousness, but we are not yet abiding as consciousness. We therefore need to align the personal ego mind with the qualities of consciousness and act accordingly. This means an entire readiness to override the self-centered, selfish instincts of the personal ego mind and act in accordance with the attributes of consciousness. These attributes are the opposite of the personal ego traits identified in Step 4. As mentioned previously, these qualities are based on selfless love and include serenity, acceptance, honesty, respect, faith, gratitude, moderation, sharing, empathy, tolerance, patience, charity, compassion, purity, humility, forgiveness, selflessness, self-forgiveness, confidence, modesty, self-acceptance, self-love, humbleness, altruism, action, trust, consideration, and courage. Step 6 is saying that we need to be entirely ready to allow these qualities to determine our behaviour. We need to be willing to act in this manner even if the personal ego mind does not want to. And this will not happen unless we are totally willing to try. The deepest level of understanding of Step 6 is that transformation is not really about changing the characteristics of the personal self. We've seen that the personal ego mind is a condensed, limited form of universal mind. Transformation is not about changing our personal minds, but rather about becoming universal mind. Metamorphosis is not about producing an upgraded version of a caterpillar, but is instead about creating a butterfly out of the caterpillar. The spiritual journey is not about the prodigal son reading self-help books and seeking to improve himself. The journey is all about giving up the old life and returning to the happiness, peace, love, and unity of home. Step 6 means that we are entirely ready to begin the detailed process of transformation. Having made the decision to surrender the personal self in Step 3, and having taken and shared our personal inventory in Steps 4 and 5, we are now in a position where we can see in detail what needs to change, and we are entirely ready to begin. At the time that I worked through the steps with my sponsor, my experience of Step 6 was non-existent. I did not even understand it at the first level because I had no concept of what the God word might mean, let alone any belief that it could somehow remove my obvious faults. Step 6 was certainly a forgotten step in my experience, and it was only when I discovered Drop the Rock some years later that I began to see what I had missed. The wonderful thing about the 12 steps is that there is always more to learn and understand. It's never too late to begin the process of transformation. I may have misunderstood Step 6 at the time, but I understand it better now. The distinction made in 12 steps and 12 traditions between changing the personal self and surrendering self-will completely is of fundamental importance to recovery. The personal self is the addict. Consciousness is not an addict. The personal self is powerless. Consciousness is powerful. This is the solution. This is why it works. If we really want the solution, then we need to be entirely ready to die to the personal self and become non-personal consciousness. This will take time and practice, so meanwhile we must be willing to act in accordance with the qualities of consciousness rather than against it.